Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Daly. It's Friday, so that means I'm joined by the ever wonderful Sarah Dallal. Sarah, how are we doing? We're on the wrong side.
Why am I on this side? Flip me. There we go. Yes, I'm good.
Oh, you're hosting tonight, are you?
No, thanks. No. I'm happy it's Friday. We've made it.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a week, isn't it, Sarah?
It has been a week. I think it's been a week for everyone, but thankfully we made it, and now we have the weekend to look forward to.
Yeah. I've got to say, that Palestine top looks fire, by the way. I will be picking one up myself, so.
Do it.
Coming up on tonight's show, we've got Sky accusing the wrong person of anti-Semitism. Gary Stevenson went on Question Time and must say he dominated. And then Just Up Oil have announced that they are done. Finite, finished. As always, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button because we'd really like to get to 20,000. We are around 400 away, so we're not too far, but please help us get there. We'll also be getting to your comments at the end of the show, so make sure you're very busy in the chat. Now, on to our first story. Jeremy Corbyn was interviewed by Sophie Ridge on Sky News a couple of days ago, where he was asked to talk about Rachel Reeves' statement. Yet they couldn't help bring up, you guessed it, anti-Semitism.
Now, there'll be some who, I'll be honest, think I shouldn't be interviewing you on Gaza because you're expelled from Labour after a highly critical report by the Equality and Human Rights Watchdog about anti-Semitism.
I was not expelled for anti-Semitism.
You say that anti-Semitism is evil, that it's wrong. You are also a member of the Independent Alliance Party.
It's a group. Not
a group,
party, yeah.
Yes, apologies, a grouping.
Yeah.
Just to look at some of the examples of people in the grouping, Ayub Khan resigned from the Lib Dems after being ordered to undertake anti-Semitism training, which he disagreed with. Adnan Hussein, at a rally in 2014, claimed Israel's military operation was a Holocaust. Mohammed Iqbal was suspended from Labour after allegedly making anti-Semitic comments at a meeting. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you feel it is wrong that you have been expelled from Labour for these reasons, you're not really helping the case for the defence here, are you?
They are good colleagues and they're very good at representing their constituency and very determined to bring about peace and justice for the Palestinian people. They have exactly the same views as all the rest of us are, that racism is an evil in society. They have themselves suffered racism as Muslim people. They do not want to put the same onto Jewish people. And so we've had plenty of discussions.
So you're comfortable with all of these? Have you spoken to them about some of these reports?
I work with them. We work with them and we particularly raise issues of human rights. We raise issues about refugees. We raise issues about bringing peace to the Middle East. Surely that is a good way forward.
Some people wouldn't want me, speaking to you on Gaza. Yeah, probably your lobby journalists with you. What an absolutely insane thing to say. And I kind of feel for the guy, He must be thinking, Christ, don't these people talk about anything else? He hasn't been leader of the Labour Party for nearly 5 years, and yet they still want to attack him on this. Now, you may not have noticed, but Sophie Ridge, by trying to implicate Corbyn into another anti-Semitism scandal, talked about independent MP Iqbal Mohammed, one of the members of the Independent Alliance. You saw there that she said that he was suspended from the Labour Party over anti-Semitism. One problem, it's the wrong guy. Sophie was actually referring to Mohammed Iqbal. He was suspended by Labour, and Iqbal has no connection to this MP. Now, granted, they do have the same name but reversed, but if you're a well-paid journalist from a major corporation, I think you should get that right. Now, once they realised their mistake, they pulled the interview and then re-uploaded it with that question cut out. But nothing was said. No apology at the time. It took Stephen Methan from Navarre Media to call him out, and then finally, Sophie did an apology.
Now, we wanted to clarify something discussed on last night's programme. During an interview with Jeremy Corbyn, we talked about the Independence Alliance group of MPs, and I made a reference to one of its members, Mohammed Iqbal, as having been previously suspended by the Labour Party for allegedly making anti-Semitic comments in a meeting. We wish to make clear that Mohammed Iqbal is in fact a councillor. He's not an MP, not a member of this group. Rather, Iqbal Mohammed is a member of the Independence Alliance group of MPs and did not make such comments. We want to apologise for this error and any confusion that was caused.
Now, Iqbal Mohammed has fired back at Sky News, and he said, the ease with which the mainstream media throw around baseless allegations of anti-Semitism against those critical of Israel's genocidal actions against the Palestinians is deeply concerning and shameful. And I think he's absolutely spot on. Sarah, no apology from Sky until they were called out for it. They were just, they were just itching, really itching to try and inundate Corbyn with another anti-Semitism scandal, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's predictable that they do that. And you know what? I think I always try and point out when lazy journalism is happening. And this is an accurate example of lazy journalism. Like, oh, well, I guess they all look the same. So let's just, wrong name. I think, and it's that it's got racialized undertones to it. And it's political hit work that's kind of dressed up as like impartial reporting, and there's no impartiality when it comes to this at all. The fact that Sky News only apologized after Novara Media came out and were like, hey, you got it wrong, I think speaks volumes. The fact that they couldn't issue the apology beforehand is just they're losing their journalistic integrity. They only did that because they got caught, and I don't know if they would have done it if they hadn't have been caught out. But I kind of want to talk about this weird obsession that the media has with Corbyn and consistently trying to paint him as some anti-Semite. It's getting so tiring and tedious, and it just feels fabricated at this point. Like, he firstly has not been Labour leader since 2020. That's nearly 5 years. But anytime Corbyn opens his mouth, or worse, like dares to exist, they're like, oh, well, you're an anti-Semite. So, like, anything you say is going to be linked to that. And it's getting really, really tiring. We know anti-Semitism is obviously real, and it must be fought, but weaponizing it in that sort of way, in a space like that, using it cynically to smear someone who has spent a lifetime literally fighting racism, I think is despicable.
Yeah, and obviously Sophie Ridge came up with other examples from the other MPs from the Independent Alliance, right? But none of them said or did anything anti-Semitic. One of the MPs, she said, well, compared what's happening in Gaza to a Holocaust. Now, I'm sorry, but many people have compared it to a Holocaust. And if you think that is offensive, if you think that it's not accurate, I would say I find it more offensive that hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are being slaughtered, yet you're angry at someone used the term Holocaust. And I've used that term before. I don't think it's out the question to say that this is a Holocaust of Palestinians. But I find it very funny that the media's selective outrage is on words and language, but not on the actions of the government. But you're right. It's pathetic. They're still trying to weaponize anti-Semitism against Corbyn, but it's not going to work anymore. The world is witnessing the live streaming of a genocide. No one's falling for it anymore, are they?
No, I agree. Well, I hope they're not. And the ones that are the ones that I think are beyond, are irredeemable, to be honest. Like, they cannot be salvaged. I think that was the term that Helena used the other day. They are unsalvageable. And I think the tide is turning. You can kind of see it everywhere, like from TikTok to trade unions to any social media site that you're on. It's like we are confronted with the fact that a genocide is happening. People cannot buy into any other narrative apart from the fact that this is a genocide, because you cannot bomb hospitals, you cannot starve children, you can't flatten entire cities in real time on live stream and then expect people to stay silent just because you slap the label anti-Semitism on it. And I think people really, I don't know why we have to keep having this conversation, Curtis. Like, can people begin to separate like us criticizing Zionism and settler colonialism and all of this sort of stuff away from anti-Semitism? Like, why is it we're having the same laborious conversations about what anti-Semitism actually is and what being against Zionism actually is? Like, the horror unfolding in Gaza, in Palestine, is not a grey area, and I don't think that you can be impartial or sitting on the fence when it comes to that sort of stuff. It's not a complex conflict. Why are people trying to overcomplicate something that isn't complex? It's right in front of your eyes. Like, confront the truth.
Liberals often like to overcomplicate simple things and then simplify things that are complicated. And one of those things is Israel-Palestine. Oh, it was complicated. Fucking not. It's not. It's a genocide. That's what it is. And look, the anti-Semitism weaponization, smearing of Jeremy Corbyn and the left, it worked in 2018, 2019. Right, it worked. It helped destroy Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not saying that was the only reason why Labour lost, but it was definitely part of it. But now, as I said, it's not going to wash on people.
No.
And I say this point every single time. I'm thinking of Jewish people in mind because it trivializes anti-Semitism. It makes Jewish people feel worse because they feel like it's everywhere because the media is telling them it is. And then also, on the flip side, those that see it for what it is, weaponization, unfortunately, may fall into the trap that nothing's anti-Semitic. And of course, there is anti-Semitism in society, and it's still prevalent. So, but obviously, again, the media do not give a flying fuck about Jewish people. They never have.
No.
Like they've never cared about any other minority group. But they absolutely do have an interest in upholding the Western foreign policy establishment agenda and Zionism or supporting Israel. So, of course, but that's the thing, though, given what we've had over the last nearly 2 years now, or year and a half, and obviously the 75 years preceding that, but especially the last year and a half because it's been at the forefront of people's consciousness, people aren't buying it. And in one hand, I think that's really, really good that people are seeing through the bullshit. But again, on the other hand, it's completely trivializing it, and people are going to think it's like sort of the boy who cried wolf. Yeah. But I just think they're fucking still doing this. They're still doing it, and it's so pathetic that they can't speak to Jeremy Corbyn without bringing it up.
It's tiring, actually. And the fact, let's be super clear here. Like, I don't want anyone to twist their words. Like, anti-Semitism is definitely a poison. Like, it is something that should be confronted always. But conflating it with the criticism of Israel, I think, like you said, especially from like anti-racist campaigners, many of whom are Jewish themselves, doesn't protect Jewish people, and it won't protect Palestinians. All it does is that it protects a violent state. And I don't know if you want to be complicit in that. And if you do, then maybe sit with yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and be like, why? But this isn't. I find this is something that happens across media a lot. Like, and I'm finding that these mistakes they make are a method at this point, because this isn't just about one journalist or one era. I think now this is beginning to be a bit of a pattern where the media, Sky included, play a central role in the systematic weaponization of anti-Semitism. I think especially when it comes to delegitimizing the left or movements on the left, and undermining support for Palestinians. So yeah, I'm getting slightly tired of it. Leave Corbyn alone.
Leave Corbyn alone. But if like Boris Johnson gets an interview, they won't bring up his remarks in his book where he compared Muslims to letterboxes.
Yeah.
Or actually his own anti-Semitic remarks in his book, right?
Yeah.
You won't get mainstream journalists saying that. So why is it that Jeremy Corbyn is asked? And of course, we know it's nothing to like being concerned about anti-Semitism. We've been over this argument over and over again. It is just, I'm so over it. I'm over it.
Why do they? Yeah. It's a good question. Like, why do they do it? And I think it's because they see someone like Corbyn or the likes of Corbyn. They represent a threat to the political and economic status quo. Absolutely. So it's like, how can we tarnish them? Just slap on, yeah, you're anti-Semitic. Yeah, you're a racist, and then people will start going, yeah, maybe they are. And they'll start looking for it. Anything that confirms their biases, that's what they're going to look out for. So, yeah, slightly tiring.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to leave that one behind onto the next story. That's Gary Stevenson. Gary Stevenson made an appearance on Question Time. And, well, if you ask me, I think he wiped the floor with everyone.
This growth in wealth inequality, it is going to keep the middle class and the working class poor. It is going to gut government services, and that is the people in this room. Their kids, their grandkids will be poor.
Gary, you've obviously,
because we are not dealing with wealth inequality.
As you rightly say, you spent a lot of time thinking about this. What do you think the solution or solutions might be?
We have to shift the tax system. We have a tax system which taxes ordinary working people 30, 40, 50, 60%, while people like the Duke of Westminster can inherit £10 billion and pay nothing. If you do that, wealth will be sucked out of the middle class. It's already been completely bankrupted the working class. It will bankrupt the government, which is what we are seeing. And there'll be poverty. There'll be broad poverty. There'll be no middle class left. Why are we taxing working people more than billionaires? Tax wealth, not work. Give these people a break. Give their kids a chance. Tax the billionaires. Of course you should.
What makes you think it would be different here?
Fiona, we did it here. We did it here. We did it here in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and people like my dad, people like my granddad, who was a bus conductor, were able to buy houses, have financial security, have pensions, have retirements, go on holidays. We did it here. We did it here, and we're losing that now because we're not taxing the rich. The rich are getting richer, and ordinary families are losing the ability to buy houses, have kids. We can do it. We've done it before. When the second home stamp duty tax was brought in, I was very surprised because I didn't think the Conservatives would tax rich people. I looked into it. There was an exemption for people who bought 7 or more homes at once. And then Jeremy Hunt went and bought 7 homes. Listen, I understand it is difficult to tax rich people because politicians are rich people and they're funded by rich people and they put loopholes in the system that mean rich people don't pay them and it ends up being paid by working people. That doesn't mean we don't do it. What kind of world have we made here? You know, we need to look at the... We always look at the individual. This person has a mental health problem. This person has a mental health problem. It doesn't come out of nowhere. These people don't just suddenly get sick. My dad worked for the post office and he had a family and he bought a house and he has a retirement, he has a pension. Kids can't get that. It's a societal problem. We need to make sure young people have economic opportunity.
Incredible. You know, you've got the panellists who are out at such poshos versus Gary's come from a working class background, and you can see the stark difference. You know, he's very much a populist, and God knows we need more of that. Now, I thought this exchange with corporate lackey journalist Camilla was very, very interesting. Let's take a look.
We need to make a decision as to whether we want millionaires' cash to go into the exchequer or not. I appreciate that millionaires and billionaires do have a habit, seemingly, of avoiding quite a lot of tax. But let's use the example of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the owner of Ineos. Before he moved to Monaco in 2020, he was adding hundreds of millions to HMRC. Now he's contributing nothing because he's a classic example of if the tax take gets too high, then unfortunately contributions go down because the rich can afford to move elsewhere and avoid it. And that's not progress.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? Do you think that China would allow somebody to own billions and billions and billions of pounds of Chinese assets and then move to Monaco and not pay tax on those assets?
I have no idea what the policy would be in China, but then lots of billionaires in China are reliant on slave labour, so it's probably not the best example.
Listen, we have given the literal assets of this country to very, very, very wealthy people, and we have created a tax system that makes it voluntary for them to pay tax. If you do that, ordinary people will get poorer and poorer and poorer every year, and millionaires and billionaires will get richer and richer every year, and ordinary people will not be able to buy homes and have families.
But Gary,
and I'm not just saying that, I bet on that.
Rich don't pay tax in the UK, are you?
The tax burden is falling on working people. Working people pay rates at much higher levels.
But you also agree, I appreciate that working people are paying tax. Everyone's paying tax. Is anyone who's working not paying tax? The rich do pay their taxes. You're saying that you think they should pay more tax on their wealth? And are you differentiating between wealth or inheritance?
Wealth. They should pay tax on their wealth. If you don't tax these people on their wealth, they will squeeze everybody out.
And the European examples where that's been tried, France, Norway, etc., where they've had to scrap those schemes because, A, they're too much to administrate, and B, they don't get enough revenue in. What's your response to that? Because it's not as if European nations haven't tried this. They've tried it, and unfortunately, it's failed.
She's from a private school, by the way. No surprise. Now, of course, this argument gets trotted out. You tax them, the rich leave, blah, 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 regardless of the facts. Now, we're going to discuss that in a short minute. And also, she said Norway. We're going to talk about Norway also in a short minute. Fiona Bruce, one of the highest paid BBC journalists, right? She also made an outright false claim. Can we have video 5, please?
You will know as well as I do that wealth taxes have been tried in a number of countries. Only Switzerland has stuck with it. I mean, they've got no capital gains tax, they've got no inheritance tax, they've got a slightly different situation. Yep. But most countries have abandoned them because they don't bring in that much revenue.
Sorry, I was getting some messages from the producer. We got an update on some other story, which we'll probably talk about later on. But yeah, so that's Fiona Bruce saying that wealth taxes don't work. It was tried in Europe and it failed. Guess what? She's wrong. So despite people pushing lies and myths, it has actually been a success in Norway. So as you can see, there's a graph on screen. In 2022, they increased their wealth, the wealth tax, sorry, to 1.1%. This graph shows the implementation of a wealth tax, and you can see the revenue from the wealth tax skyrockets. So that's Fiona Bruce, big high-profile journalist, earning a lot of money, just blazingly saying that wealth taxes don't work in Europe. Camilla Tominey saying Norway scrapped it. Well, they didn't. So they're both lying or they're wrong. Now, finally, this clip, I think, is so unbelievably entertaining. It is perfect.
Okay. Who should be plugging the deficit, benefit claimants or billionaires?
Yeah, this is very frustrating for me. I've been screaming for 5 years that this is going to happen, that this situation will get worse and worse and worse, which it has been doing. I was betting on it for 10 years before that. For people who don't know who I am, I was Citibank's #1 trader in the world in 2011. I got paid millions of pounds because I bet that our economy would collapse because you wouldn't deal with growing inequality. I quit that job in 2014 to try and stop that inequality from growing. I was doing that in private until the beginning of COVID, when it became clear that inequality would increase enormously. Does anyone know what the total government deficit is since the beginning of COVID? It's £1 trillion now, which is £20,000 for every single adult in the country. So if every single one of you is not £20,000 cash richer, someone else has your money.
Is that the debt or the deficit?
It's the increase in the debt, which is the deficit.
Right, yeah.
Does anyone know who has that £1 trillion?
I think you might be about to tell us.
It is the richest people in the country. It is the richest people in the country. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If we pause the economy and give £1 trillion, £20,000 for every adult in this room and the rest of the country to the richest people in the country, and then unpause the economy, what do you think will happen to living standards for ordinary people? They will collapse. This is a problem of growing wealth inequality. The extremely rapid growth of wealth of the richest people in the country. The average billionaire increased their wealth by £630 million in the first year alone of COVID.
When you say it's the wealthy people, isn't it things like the Canadian pension funds and all that sort of thing?
It's the wealthiest individuals in the country. It's multimillionaires and billionaires. These are the guys.
But also massive pension funds from abroad.
And here.
And who are the overwhelming owners of those pension funds? The richest people in the country. Listen, these men and women are not £20,000 richer.
I don't know if they're the richest people in the country, but okay.
Who here's £20,000 cash rich than before COVID? I'll tell you who probably is. Every single person on this panel, OK? The richest people in the country are getting richer.
Hang on, don't include us in all this. I don't know if you've seen the way the BBC works, but they're not exactly raising salaries by that much. Anyway.
I love that reaction, you know? It's so funny. Not us. We're not wealthy. And you heard at the end, right? Fiona Bruce literally said that the BBC are not increasing their salary by that much. And she's right. The BBC didn't increase their salary by 20,000. It was 200,000. So before COVID, Fiona Bruce was earning £250,000 a year. And now she's on £450,000 a year. So yes, Gary was completely right. Let's look at the rest of the panel though, shall we? So Darren Jones, you can see him on camera. He was like, well, not me either. Darren Jones in 2019 was on around 79.5 grand. He's now on 126k. Richard Holden, also around 79.5 grand. He's on 93,904. And Daisy Cooper, well, it's the same as Holden. So yes, the members of the panel are rich and they've seen a big jump in their earnings in just a few short years. Sarah, I want to get your reaction to Gary's performance, but also I want to get your response from the reaction of the other panelists.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Stevens's presence is absolutely powerful in that space, not just because of his actual command. His command is brilliant, but because he brought a perspective that's virtually erased from mainstream media, an unapologetically working class voice that speaks plainly about economic injustice, about inequality that we're facing in this country, about austerity. He cut through all of that technocratic jargon that all of those individuals were trying to bring into the space and challenge this elite consensus that needed to be challenged in a way that was both clear and confrontational. I think too often we're having people that pander to A, neoliberal ideas, and B, the elite. And I'm glad that he's not doing that.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt. The stream is down for copyright.
What?
It's down?
Yeah, it's literally been taken. Oh, 1 second. It might have come back on now. 1 second.
What?
Yeah, it literally went off on the actual preview as well. I'm on the YouTube
That's so
app.
Strange. I've never had that before where it goes down. Are we live?
Down.
Can you ask the guys if it's come back on in the comments? Could you just reply and let us know? Oh, it's just come back up. They've just said, okay, I'm going to leave. Sorry to interrupt, but it did go down for a few seconds.
That's so strange. I know obviously it might get demonetized or whatever, even though we're using BBC footage.
It's fair. It's fair use anyway, but that can be disputed
fair use,
later.
Exactly. Fucking bastards. They don't want us talking about...
Crazy.
They don't want us talking about Gary Stevens.
They said to go back 4 minutes. Maybe just start the conversation again from bringing Sarah in after.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
guys.
Just start from the top, please, Sarah, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think your question was about getting the reaction from Gary's performance and also the reaction
and also
from
the reaction of the
panelists
panelists as well, because it's very telling,
yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. So I was just saying that I found that Gary's presence was absolutely powerful, and I think that's what we need. Like he commanded presence, he commanded the facts, and he confronted the elite consensus. He's challenging the elite consensus. And what I find really interesting is that he's cutting through the technocratic jargon that they're trying to like impose upon him, and that's something that I think is great. He isn't afraid to critique the status quo, and I think that that's what's needed. We need working class voices, particularly like Gary's, who represent us, who have actually suffered the consequences of austerity and economic inequality for as long as we can remember, and then even more so when COVID hit. So his voice matters. But what I find really interesting is that contrast between Gary and the entire panel. Like there is a huge contrast there. The reaction from the panelists who are career politicians, high-earning journalists. Fiona, the audacity she has to be like, well, they haven't raised our salaries at the BBC. You know what, Fiona? Fuck you. You're so entitled. Like, honestly, the professional class figures that offer these bland defenses of the system, I find to be so insulting. The reaction from them was defensive, it was patronizing, it was dismissive. And I think that kind of highlights what the elite consensus does all the time. Silence working class voices.
What's ironic about this, though, is he's probably the richest person on that panel, right? He is a multimillionaire. Look, I read his book. I suggest you go read it. The Trading Game's called. And he goes through basically how he made his money. And he's explained it multiple times, but when you read the book, you really can get into why he made loads of money. But you get a sense, and you kind of know, he never lost his working class roots. And so he is no longer working class, but he definitely speaks for the working class. Because if you're an MP who's on 90 grand a year, who's definitely poorer than Gary Stevenson, or Camilla Tominey, who went to a private school and just a corporate lucky journalist, right? They're poorer than he is, technically, but they do the bidding of the bourgeoisie, don't they? And some of the attacks on Gary Stevenson are fucking hilarious, by the way. You know, I've heard he's a communist. He is an establishment stooge, because of people saying, well, he's come out of nowhere. Well, first of all, he hasn't come out of nowhere. I mean, I've been aware of his channel for quite a long time, during the COVID times. It's just that sometimes like growth can be almost overnight. Okay. That's just how things work. You know, just because they come into your consciousness and you haven't heard of them before, doesn't mean they're a plant, right? But the idea that he's an establishment plant who's railing against the super rich, I find that fucking hilarious. Yeah. I mean,
That's
anything to add on that?
Yeah, that's frustrating. I mean, but I hate it when people do this, when they just brandish anyone as a communist because they're actually challenging the status quo.
Yeah. And taxes are not communism, by the way.
They're not communism at all, actually. Actually, they're not at it. Like, that's not at all. But I think what I find really interesting is that there is a lot of class privilege in that space. And Gary has lived the effects of austerity and inequality. Like, yes, currently, he no longer is a part of the working class. However, he grew up as a working class boy. He has lived the effects of austerity and inequality, much like many of us have as well. So for them to kind of just brandish him as this communist because he's actually like, hey, let's sort this out. Let's actually tax the rich. I find to be a little bit disingenuous, and I hate using that word, but it's so entirely disingenuous.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, my phone is buzzing, and it hasn't stopped buzzing all day because I've done a couple of tweets defending Gary, calling some people out.
Good.
And it's now inundated with so many people saying the same things, that he's a commie, he's a socialist. Look, I don't think Gary Stevenson is particularly ideological. I don't know if he knows he's a socialist or if he thinks he's a socialist or not. I think he just experienced what it's like in the trading game, realizing that the economy is fucked, people are poor, and he was making money off of it. Yeah. And he realized it was inequality. This is just purely pragmatic for him. I doubt he's a socialist. You know, I don't know if he even thinks about that. That is irrelevant to me. It is, it's not material. What is material is inequality is absolutely destroying this economy and destroying society. And you've got just brain dead idiots on Twitter just trotting out the line of the very wealthy, you know, because it's Elon Musk's Twitter, right? It's the bootlicking website. Actually, taxes don't work. Well, what about the 50s, 60s, and 70s when you actually had income taxes? I'm talking about, not even wealth taxes. Income taxes were something like 90 to 95% on the very richest. And what happened? Did the sky fall in? No, the society was far more equal. You have people who could have a home and raise a family on one income. And guess what? The very richest who are paying, 90% marginal tax rate, they were still absolutely loving life because they were still incredibly rich. That's what we had. And people like Gary are not even calling for that. We're just saying, maybe a 1%, wealth tax. And they're losing their minds. It's like the meme where someone's on like 30, 40 grand a year is simping for the billionaire class. It's pathetic.
It's so true. No, but you're so right. No, they're losing their shit. The rich don't oppose these wealth taxes.
They don't care about you. They're not thinking about you.
They never cared. But the thing is, they don't oppose these wealth taxes because they think it won't work. They oppose them because they know it will work. That's the issue. A well-designed wealth tax properly enforced, would actually challenge their power. And that's why they fight so hard against it, because they want to delegitimize the very idea of being taxed a little bit more. I think the spectre of capital flight is literally raised every single time the working class demands fairness, and I'm sick and tired of them literally throwing their toys out the pram every time we say you need to pay your fair share. But and it is really backed up by data. And we can. I think you want to talk about Norway, and I'll let you get into that. But you will. It was rightly pointed out, I think. Or wrongly pointed out by that woman who I don't know her name. I can't remember her name. What was her name? The one that was like, well, look at Norway and it didn't work there.
Camilla Tominey.
Yeah, the rich didn't vanish into thin air, like you said. They didn't just disappear. They were still there, and revenue actually shot up when their wealth tax went up. So I'm confused. So we're seeing ideological warfare, to be honest, disguised as economic common sense. Every single time Gary challenged them, they pivoted. They weren't engaging in an actual debate.
It's ideological and class warfare, isn't it? It's just the mainstream media journalists who work for the corporate media being paid to say that actually we can't tax the rich. It's very funny because he mentions that on the clip. He says it's very hard to tax the rich because you've got politicians who go on nice little corporate retreats. They go to Davos, and they shack up with these guys who just want to basically buy you and influence the politics of the MPs. Then you're people in the media, and that's why it's hard to do, right? Because there's no willingness to it. And to jump off what you said, because I want to point out to people, there's this. By the way, this stream is doing very, very well. There's a lot of viewers today, so there might be people who have never heard of Turn Left or not left wing themselves. I want to point out to you, right, when corporate hacks say taxes don't work or rich people will leave, you have to understand that this isn't out of concern that it won't work. These are excuses. They are principally against it. If they were genuine, why not try it in this country? Let's see who's right. Because if you're so sure that it won't work, do it and prove us wrong. It's a similar argument or discussion when it comes to universal basic income, right? All I see is someone on the panel saying, we support UBI, and someone else saying, well, it's a nice idea. I love that idea, but it just won't work. Why don't you try it and prove us wrong? It's not because they don't think it works or that they pretend to support it. It's because they do not support it. That's literally the truth.
Exactly.
They don't want them being implemented because they're worried that it will work. So, yeah, I mean, I think I love to talk about Gary. I love to talk about taxes, but we're probably going to leave it there. It's 8:10 already. We've probably exhausted a lot of things we want to say anyway.
Say one more thing. I'm so sorry. Yeah, just
please,
one
no, please go for it.
The thing is, though, the likes of Gary, and I think the likes of us and anyone who kind of agrees with Gary, I think we're breaking the unspoken rule that needs to be broken every single time, and it's polite bourgeoisie politics. This whole idea, you shouldn't name the system, don't talk about capitalism, don't talk about class. But I think we do need to talk about it. We need to talk about it plainly, just like Gary does, and without apology, to be honest. And calling, because they tend to do it a lot. I've been called a communist so often, but likes of Gary also getting called a communist. It's just classic red baiting. I think it's just designed to delegitimize any conversation around the class war. So keep talking about it. That's what I want to say.
Absolutely. Again, it's a class war on the working class, and our job is to fucking end the class war. So, but we're going to move on to our final story of the evening. Just Stop Oil are done. They announced yesterday that they are hanging up the high vis and will no longer be protesting. Why? Well, according to them, job done. 3 years after bursting onto the scene in a blaze of orange at the end of April, we will be hanging up the high vis. Just Stop Oil's initial demand to end new oil and gas is now government policy, making us one of the most successful civil resistance campaigns in recent history. we've kept over 4.4 billion barrels of oil in the ground, and the courts have ruled new oil and gas licenses unlawful. So, it is the end of soup on Van Gogh, cornstarch on Stonehenge, and slow marching in the streets. But it is not the end of trials, of tagging and surveillance, fines, probation, and years in prison. So just like that, they're finished, which, you know, is surprising to me, because given that this Labour government are notorious liars, given that they've taken money from the fossil fuel industry, hanging up the high vis is obviously premature. You know, why not say, look, we're on standby. We're going to stop protesting temporarily, but we're ready to protest if they break their promises, which they probably will. Now, look, I support the message of JSO, right? But this seems quite dumb, right? Especially after this post just one day later. Yesterday, 10 Downing Street issued a response to our announcements. They said all oil and gas has a future for decades to come. Their statement demonstrates that our politicians have no grasp on reality, or if they do, they have decided to knowingly kill billions. So I feel like this has literally made their announcement completely pointless. Now, they also claimed that it was them who kept 4.4 billion barrels of oil in the ground, which is actually disputed. Just Stop Oil are claiming credit for our work. Bad form. Now, the work of Sarah Finch and the Weald Action Group took their case to the Supreme Court regarding Horse Hill that led to the court's ruling new oil and gas is unlawful. So it seems that the government didn't change their mind because of JSO. The courts made a ruling because of the hard work and activism from the Weald Action Group. And the Supreme Court ruling, which they won, that's what changed everything. Now, we also have a Turn Left exclusive statement from Lorraine Inglis, co-founder of Weald Action Group.
We were very shocked at Just Stop Oil's statement yesterday with the claims that they made. Weald Action Group is a network of local community grassroots groups fighting onshore oil and gas in the southeast, with some local groups formed as far back as 2012. After a 5-year court battle, in June 2024, we won a historic landmark victory in the Supreme Court with the Finch judgment that stipulates Scope 3 emissions are to be included in environmental impact assessments for fossil fuel development. This has halted all fossil fuel development in its tracks. At present, the oil site at Horse Hill, the planned new coal mine in Cumbria, 2 new gas wells at Biscathorpe and Saltford in Lincolnshire, and the offshore Rosebank and Jackdaw oil and gas sites are all halted, among other projects. As a result of our win, the government has been forced to rethink its approach to permitting new oil and gas fields. A consultation on this closed in January. So it was very disheartening to see Just Stop Oil making the claim that they had kept over 4.4 billion barrels of oil in the ground, and the courts have ruled new oil and gas licences unlawful. We feel they are taking credit for our work. They are also taking credit for the Labour government's commitment to stop new oil and gas licences. But this is greenwashing from the Labour government. As the UK are already carved up with enough licences, there is no need for a new round. We acknowledge there are 16 prisoners in jail for fighting for Just Stop Oil to keep oil in the ground. But these are very big claims that they are making. There are many of us volunteering within the climate movement, and we want to ensure all our grassroots campaigners are honoured and respected for what we have achieved. We asked Just Stop Oil to retract the statement, but they refused, say that it was already out there. It saddens me to have to make this statement, as we are all in it together in the climate movement.
Some interesting stuff there. Sarah, what do you make of this announcement? You know, is it because they think they won, or do you think this might have to do with the fact that a lot of JSO activists are in jail and they, you know, physically cannot operate?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's probably a bit of both. I think like this isn't a mission accomplished moment.
No,
the claim that I think that Just Stop Oil has won, I think is quite premature. And I think it's politically dangerous as well to a certain degree. If this is about activists being burnt out, imprisoned or under state surveillance, and there's no doubt that the British state has cracked down pretty hard on them, then just say that. But I think own that reality, don't package retreat as victory. And I think that's the thing that's unsettling me slightly. I think to declare that the job is done when the government immediately responds by reaffirming its commitment to decades of more oil and gas, I think is like a bit of a side-eye moment. I feel like they will probably dedicate more money towards oil and gas. So I don't see how this is a victory in any way, shape or form, but it tells us everything we need to know. They rendered that Jet Stop Oil's responses irrelevant. And worse, I think it risks demobilizing people. People have a right to speak out about the things that they see as atrocious. And I think that the investments that we are making in oil and gas are atrocious. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So it came one day after the government were like, no, we love oil and gas. So I feel like that's irrelevant. And you're right that it immobilizes people or demobilizes people, because it's like, okay, so I guess we're going to give up now, or we're just going to finish. And like, again, the Labour Party, this Labour government, are like unbelievably dishonest. Yeah. They're one of the worst liars we've ever had. I mean, Keir Starmer's a pathological liar, right? And I just think, why do this? Because they're obviously going to break it. But also, you know, look, I was having a discussion with one of our contributors who was sort of trying to give a bit of nuance here and was saying, look, their goal was to stop new oil and gas licenses. That's been done. So I guess it is job done. But I'm thinking, but surely they're called Just Stop Oil, right? They care about the climate. Why would you stop at they've stopped new oil and gas licenses. That's not job done because we're still using oil. Surely you would go on to something else. It doesn't make any sense to me. And you're absolutely right as well that why don't they just come out, if this is the case, by the way, we are just speculating, but if it is the case that they just don't have enough activists, fucking say that, because I tell you what, that's way more powerful. If you say, oh, by the way, you know, job done now, guys. We've done all right here. This is it. Or if they say, look, we really want to hold the government to account, but this authoritarian government is locking up our activists. Now, whether you agree with us or not, I think that's really, really bad that the state is clamping down. That's far more of a powerful message. But to sort of say, no, I think we're done now. Make sense of it for me, please, Sarah.
No, agreed.
I'm confused.
I'm confused. I think we're both confused.
I'm confused.
We need to be honest. The Labour government, like you said, dishonest. They haven't been able to earn anyone's trust. So I think this is a party that still accepts money from fossil fuel interests and still refuses to commit to public ownership of energy. So I think to step back now on the assumption that Labour will follow through on climate commitments is naive at best and reckless, I think, at worst. So I think it does worry me slightly. And like you said, why not just say, hey, like, we're on standby, like ready to protest if they break their promises? And I think that would have been the strategic move. Like, standby, I think, keeps the infrastructure alive, and it maintains pressure and it preserves the threat of action, which is often as powerful as the action itself. And it would have people thinking, oh yeah, well, actually they might come again. I think declaring a full stop rather than a pause sends entirely the wrong message, entirely the wrong signal, both to the public and to the state. Movements that succeed over time are ones that don't declare victory based on the promises of those in power, but they keep mobilized, they stay visible, and crucially, I think they hold the line after legal wins to ensure implementation, to ensure accountability. So I don't know if this is the best way forward.
Let me ask you about JSO then. Obviously, we're all in agreement. We agree with their aims. There's been discussion among the left whether they're actually effective. They claim that they capped 4.4 billion barrels worth of oil in the ground or underground. That's probably been, well, that has been disproven, right? It was the World Action Group who got it through the courts. So in actuality, not to try and be too, not to try and attack JSO too much, right? Because again, I agree with their aims, but have they actually done anything? Like the only thing, well, the main thing, which is stop new oil and gas licenses, can't even be attributed to them. And in fact, it's very possible that they've pissed off more people than they expected. Don't get me wrong, protesting the street is going to annoy people. Throwing soup on Van Gogh, right, it's going to piss people off. But obviously the point of protest is, not to be convenient, right? But if you think they actually haven't won any material gains, and maybe all they've done is piss people off, have JSO been more harm than good?
A really good question. I mean, let's just look at the profile of JSO really quickly. Like a lot, I think there is a slight class dynamic there. To be honest, like when I look at JSO's, when I look at JSO's profile, like they are disproportionately young, working class, and sometimes like a lot of the time marginalized. So I don't know if if I think they're doing great work. I do think that it's a little bit difficult, I think, given the time and the climate that we're living in, but I think we do need a level of humility. I think they are doing great. Humility is needed in the climate movement. Not every victory belongs to us. I think sometimes it's others, often quieter, more community rooted activists who do the heavy lifting, and I think of those in the global south particularly, because I don't think that their voice at the forefront a lot of the time when it comes to this the climate crisis, when it does need to be at the forefront. And I think we need to acknowledge the moves that they're making, that they are replicating the same logic, but they aren't, I don't know, it's so sticky, and I actually don't even know how to answer it.
They've had this sort of accusation that they're a middle class movement, and if you ask me, I don't care what your class makeup is. If you're fighting against climate change, that's a noble thing. But obviously, you got to weigh up what you agree with and how do you get people on side, right? I
guess don't replicate the logic of liberals, and I think that's the risk that happens.
Possibly, you know, I think. I remember when Extinction Rebellion, they put out a statement saying, we're actually, you know, we're not ideological, we're not necessarily against capitalism or for socialism, we just care about the planet. And it was so tone deaf and so liberal, because it's like, you absolutely need to make this a class issue, you absolutely need to make this an economic issue, you absolutely need to say the planet needs to end capitalism, and they were sort of backed off that. I think, and I said this in the past, I think a successful climate movement is when you combine it with economic issues and class, like the Green New Deal movement in the US, right? Which is to say, look, we need to understand climate change is a class thing, right? It's not middle class, pink-haired people who are sounding alarm on climate, and actually it affects your economic position, and we need to create good, high-quality paid jobs. I think that's the more successful way of doing it. Bring people in. Now, of course, that sounds kind of stupid, because at the end of the day, whether it's a class issue or not, climate does affect everyone. It absolutely does. But unfortunately, people don't realise that, I think. So people think of the materials. I think if they make it a holistic movement between climate and class, I think that might be better. But at the end of the day, there's no silver bullet. I could be completely wrong.
I think it's actually. I think it's a really, really good point. To be fair, like Just the Oil, their campaign is bold and it's worthy of credit. It's visible, it's provocative, and I think that there's credit. We need to give them credit where credit is just due, because it does get people talking.
Yeah.
But social movements, I think, like you said, aren't measured by how much media they generate. I think they're measured by what they build. And what they sustain and who they empower. So I think if you are pissing a shitload of people off, you're probably in people's mouths. They're probably going to resent you slightly. So I guess in relation to what you're saying, declaring victory now obviously is very premature, but I think it risks demoralizing supporters as well, who need to be mobilized in a movement that requires all voices to be at the forefront too.
Yeah. I think people conflate when you talk about, there's no such thing as bad press. Yeah, that works when you're in Hollywood or whatever, because you're making money. It's not the same as politics. Like, you can absolutely have bad press. And I think this idea that, just get yourself out in the media, that's a good thing. No, because you risk the issue that, yes, more people are talking about you, but you've got more haters. Now, if you're a celebrity who just wants to make money, you actually can monetize hate, right? Yeah. So people hate you more. They're more motivated to engage with you. That's probably a good thing in terms of making yourself richer. In politics, though, you want to be popular. You want to be liked. So if more and more people talk about you, but they fucking hate you, that's not doing the cause any good. This is not me sat here just completely piling on JSO, by the way, because I understand doing these moves is going to annoy people. This is not about that. This is just obviously looking at what's working and what's not working. But all this kind of feels a bit irrelevant now, because they're hanging up the high vis, so it seems. I suspect this isn't going to be the end of them, though. I mean, it can't be, because Keir Starmer isn't going to stick to. I don't think he's going to stick to no new oil and gas.
No, agreed. The government will still keep drilling, and they will keep investing in things that are detrimental to the climate. But I think, like, anyone who's a Just Stop Oil supporter, or like anyone who is like wanting change in terms of the climate, I think if you really want a real climate movement, not that Just Stop Oil aren't a real climate movement, but I think if you want to mobilize the masses, I think it has to be a collective, and it needs to be rooted in the struggle for justice. And it can't just be against fossil fuels. I think you need to be against the system that sustains these things as well.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to really garner as much support as you can, because you want to make sure your cause is credible, like you said. So be credible and center everyone's voice in that. And I agree, there is a class element to this that needs to be spoken about.
And I think you can relate this back to what we were talking about, in the last story about Gary Stevenson talking about wealth taxes. Why can't JSO say, look, what Gary Stevenson has been talking about wealth taxes, this is our movement too? Because we've had basically the very richest in society, or corporations, have destroyed this planet for profit. We need to get those taxes back to pay, because they need to pay to clean up their mess, basically. So I think it should be intertwined. I think we are going to end it there for stories, that is, and we're going to bring in our producer, and we're going to go to your comments. I think we've got a lot of good comments tonight. It's been a very, very busy show. We had some very good views, and I think there's some pretty decent super chats as well.
We do.
Lewis, how are we?
Hello, everyone. Hello. Sorry, just need to clear my throat. So, firstly, we got a lovely £10 donation from Oz Striker, and he said, "Thank you, Oz. Gary didn't just mean a literal extra 20k in the bank. The wealthy are asset rich, own their homes, have second or third homes, etc. Since COVID asset values, especially hard assets, have risen." And this is absolutely true. And the thing is, as well, the numbers that Gary's talking about when he actually spits these numbers out, like, you can actually fact check them as well. Like, he's very accurate when it comes to these things. And even in the background now, I was just looking, even pre-COVID. So between 2010 and 2019, so again, right before COVID, the wealth of the country increased by 4 trillion, and 25% of that went to the top richest people in this country, which is around 300 and something thousand people. So even though it might sound like a lot when you say 3 trillion is going to everyone else, but you're talking about, 67 of a million people get to share 3 trillion. And then this small group of a few 100,000 people get an entire trillion to themselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Oz, for the £10 super chat. Really, really appreciate that. You're spot on, by the way. Because I know Gary wasn't speaking about people's incomes have got up by 20 grand. The reason why I wanted to point that out, though, is the reaction from the panel. Because they're like, well, that's not happened to me. And specifically Fiona Bruce, because she literally said, the BBC doesn't give us pay rises like that. So it was a tongue-in-cheek sort of attacking these people because they are out of touch. And they have
I told you guys I've met Fiona Bruce?
You've met Fiona Bruce? God.
Yeah, so when I used to work for a
David Dimbleby, sorry, is better on Question Time than Fiona Bruce, I have to say.
Yes.
So I used to work for Burberry, the good old British fashion company, and we went to this thing called the European Customer Service and Contact Center Awards. Fun name. And she presents it every year. They pay her to present it. And when I tell you that every year she is absolutely just smashed out of her face, she's literally on stage blurring. You know what? You can't even sue me for libel because I've got a video, Fiona. And yeah, like I would be drinking too if I was presenting the European Customer Service and Contact Center Awards too. But anyway, there's my little anecdote.
I'm sorry.
She still sucks at BBC Question Time.
We've got a lovely $15 donation.
Wow, Zeke the Beast. Good to see you in there again for the troubles. Thank you. I really appreciate that because obviously we were interrupted by. I think it was a pissed off Fiona Bruce. I think she was down the phone, wasn't she? She was like, "Cut these guys off." So it's very likely this is going to be completely demonetized. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Zeke's a legend. Always in the comments as well.
Absolutely.
A lovely 10 memberships
from
Natalie.
Good to see you as well. Thank you.
And then we got a lovely 5 as well from Andy.
And Andy. God, you guys have been so generous today. So something in the air. Is it the summer? Well, it's not summer. Is it the spring? Is it the nice spring weather? I don't know.
We got another 5 off Specs as well. So thank you so much, Specs.
Thank you, Specs. Maybe I should stop wearing suits then and just cash it up. Is that what it is, guys?
Right. Would you like to start from the earlier comments on the earlier stories, or would you like to go backwards?
Up to you, Mr. Producer.
Down to you.
Oh, we also just got another lovely donation from Andrew just now. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Andrew Wilton. It's an interesting profile pic there. Can't quite make it out.
Let's work from the top. Why not? So, Matt said right at the beginning, I love Gary. I love Gary, yes, but it's frustrating hearing centrists praise him when Jeremy Corbyn has been saying this for years. Yeah, this is absolutely true. But sometimes that's what it takes as well. Even though I don't like what's happened to Jeremy Corbyn, sometimes it is up to somebody else to take that mantle who hasn't been, ruined by the media and like pass the torch on. And maybe Gary could be that person. If he keeps it up right now, he's gaining so much momentum. I hope it doesn't die down.
I think as well, it's because Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. He could have been Prime Minister. They saw that more as a threat. I do think that they see Gary less of a threat because he doesn't have any institutional power. They would be very silly, though, to write him off. But I do think that's probably what it was. Because if Gary was leader of the Labour Party, or he could be Prime Minister, he's already getting attacked anyway. But we've people are joking online saying, when's the anti-Semitism accusations going to come out? And someone's already not quite done an anti-Semitism accusation, but they clipped a bit from the CEO of a Diary of a CEO podcast with Stephen Bartley loves pushing up fucking Huel stuff. Never bought it, never will. And there's a bit where basically Gary says, we just came out of World War II, we came out of the Holocaust, we don't need this to happen to again to rebalance the economy. And someone's like, Gary Stevenson says that the Holocaust rebalanced the economy, something stupid like that. So I think, Matt, it could be down to the fact that he doesn't have any institutional power. But of course, it is fucking annoying hearing piss centrists saying, "Oh yeah, well done, Gary." When, well, you were instrumental in bringing down a progressive Labour government who would have brought in wealth taxes.
Yeah, quite literally.
Zeke wants your shirt. Sarah, where'd you get it from?
These people called the Real Guys on Instagram, and all their donations go to, like, anything that's made from the tops go to a charity that supports Palestinians. So I'm pretty sure they're called the Real Guys. That's where I got it from. Yeah.
And also as well, Zeke's got a lot of comments today. He says he misses the original TL soundtrack, the one that set has more of a serious tone. So just a bit of feedback from Zeke.
Thank you.
Also, we got a lovely compliment from Andrew at the beginning as well, saying Sarah's camera quality, though. Well, that's thanks to people's donations and everything that we can get this equipment to have better shows. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. I know, guys, if you saw me at the start, I had real struggles. We've leveled up.
So, so more comments relating to the interview with Sophie Ridge. So the interview, they interview people who advocate for genocide in Palestine. What the fuck? This is such bullshit. So she did actually have an interview recently with what's her name, the ambassador for Israel. Oh my god, I hate her so much. Yeah. And she did give her like a bit of pushback. But again, what frustrates me, like she was pushing her back on the idea that it's actually Israel who broke the ceasefire agreement. They're the ones who messed it up, right? But what frustrates me is that they don't interview these people with context. They don't. I always talk, when I talk about these topics, I always add the context that Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting for his political survival right now and literally being accused of dismantling the entire democracy of Israel just to keep this war going because he's on trial. Plus, let's talk about the 5 different major organizations who have accused you of genocide. They always forget to add in the context, and it frustrates me. Even when they quote unquote do a good job by saying you broke the ceasefire, you need to add the context, and it frustrates me so much. But that's just my 2 cents.
No, completely agree with you. Sorry, no, you go first. No, go ahead. I mean, no, actually, don't go ahead. I want to go first. I actually completely agree with you. I completely agree with you, Lewis. Like, this is the thing. Them platforming people who try to delegitimize what's happening in Palestine is probably the biggest spit in the face. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, Curtis. This conflation between criticizing a Zionist state with a criticism of Jewish people. That's not the case at all. I'm sick and tired of that. It's a tired old narrative. Stop straw manning every single time people try to criticize Zionism. It's getting boring at this point.
It's also anti-Semitic as well to conflate Jewish people with Israel. Exactly. It's part of one of the IHRA definitions. So it's so funny how there's so many anti-Semites within Zionism. Sorry to say, but it's true. I've seen so much anti-Semitism from the Zionists. Yeah, a lot of them are not Jewish themselves. A lot of Christian Zionists out there.
But there's sorry, Lewis. There's been Jewish socialist groups like the Jewish Voice for Labour who've literally said like, hey, we're repeatedly pointing this out. Like, stop this conflation between anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel because it dilutes the meaning of anti-Semitism and it also marginalizes Jewish dissenters. I think it turns Jewish identity into some sort of monolith enforced by the state and its media mouthpieces. So there are Jewish people who do speak out against apartheid, occupation, and now genocide, who are ignored, mocked, and accused of being the wrong kind of Jewish person. Yeah, it's weird.
I don't want people out there thinking that all Jewish people are genocidal maniacs. And I think when the media push that narrative that, well, if you don't believe in Israel, you're not a real Jew. then for those that are sickened by Israel, you're basically telling them that Jewish people are just genocidal freaks. And that's disgusting. And there are so many people, like I said, so many Jewish people who stand on the right side of history, who are called, I don't want to repeat the word, but who are called things which is like self-hating Jew. And basically, had they been around during the Holocaust, they'd be ringing up the Nazis saying, you know, get these Jewish people. It's fucking disgusting what they are doing. And the Palestine movement, I also think it's, in a way, a pro-Jewish movement. It's saying to all the anti-Zionist Jews out there, we're standing with you. We got your back too against the Zionists who hate you.
Yeah, as well. And obviously, lots of people who are Zionists harm themselves constantly. I don't know if you guys recently saw that story that came out of Australia where it was like, I think it was the Australian Telegraph or something, where they basically tried to fake an anti-Semitic event in a pro-Palestinian business, and then they got caught out. And not only that, that's got two elements to it. Obviously, it's disgusting that they tried to set it up, but it also adds to that pile of more and more people who try and then obviously downplay anti-Semitism because they can't conflate, they conflate real anti-Semitism with the fake stuff because people have been caught either overplaying anti-Semitism, misusing it, or even just trying to set it up to keep that fear amongst the community. And it's frustrating. I will move on though because we've got loads of comments that I start today. Specs, dressed on Friday. Is it Curtis? Look naked without the jacket.
God, it must be.
I'm actually wearing my term left t-shirt too today, but you guys can't see it.
Yeah, I love wearing my suits, but I thought it was nice weather, and I thought even though look all issues we talk about is serious, right? You know, if you break it down, all the issues we talk about is quite serious. But I thought like in a way we're reacting to content, we're making fun of the right. So I thought a bit more of a chill, relaxed vibe as well. So I thought I'd dress for the occasion. Yeah, so.
So is it Moggy or Moji? The media says it all about Corbyn, but didn't say anything when Farage spewed anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And this is so true. There's such a double standard with the media and such hypocrisy. I read into one of the anti-Semitism claims that I didn't come across yesterday. Do you remember the one, Curtis, about the book where he wrote the foreword for the book? Do you remember this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he wrote a foreword for a book, and it was like this 100-year-old book that was getting republished, and the guy in the book is accused of saying anti-Semitic tropes, which, by the way, if you look into it, yes, it's true. But what's also interesting is that they were saying, oh, look, this proves he's an anti-Semite. And it's like, no, this book is a part of very important historical writing, right? And then all you have to do is go on Wikipedia, and there is an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to Winston Churchill and his anti-Semitic comments. So by that same standard, anybody who says, oh, Winston Churchill was a great guy, you are also, by that same logic, put in that same category as someone like Jeremy Corbyn. And this is what frustrates me. Like, yes, every historical figure was either probably anti-Semitic, racist, or misogynist, right? And that's unfortunate. That's the past that we have, and the present, by the way.
Well, the examples
they're held up to a different standard.
Well, the examples they give for Jeremy Corbyn's supposed anti-Semitism are quite vague, and they're really nitpicky. So one of them was a mural, right? Which, if I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't see the anti-Semitism code in it until it was pointed out to me. Right? I saw that it was basically a bunch of billionaires controlling the world. I know that's an anti-Semitic trope, and I think in the painting they had hooked noses. The person behind the painting, maybe it was supposed to be anti-Semitic coded or not. I don't know, but I think that's plausible deniability. That was one where Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semite. Apparently, he said something about Zionists being ironic. I can't remember the specific speech. That one. And I can't remember any of the others, right? But then you've got Nigel Farage, you've got, as I said, Boris Johnson, who have literal anti-Semitic quotes, and they're saying tropes and slurs. So you have that in textbook, black and white, of literal anti-Semitic tropes, and no one's pulled up on it. But like maybe this vague mural, which Jeremy Corbyn once defended, who then said, well, actually, yeah, maybe it was anti-Semitic, I disavow it. That's evidence of anti-Semitism. Obviously, they're trying to really look for anti-Semitism when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn, which I think they haven't found any. Whereas you can find a litany of examples of not just people on the political right, but so-called centrists and people within the Labour Party, but they won't call it out because, obviously, they are not against the apartheid regime of Israel. That's what it boils down to.
So the reason why I chose this comment, because it pissed me off, right? So Sean put, nothing about the thousands of Christians being massacred in Syria. As for Palestinians, they have a country, it's called Jordan. Israeli Arabs seem to be doing great. I actually want to talk about the first bit because I want to point this out to people because I spend a lot of time in far-right circles online monitoring what they're doing. And where we've got to now with the far-right radicalization is that they've been brought into it and now they're kind of being Christianized a little bit more. And this is part of the plan that these right-wing conferences and groups and people in the media are doing now, where they're trying to highlight Christians being harmed around the world. It's quite new amongst the right wing. And what's funny about this is that in response to this kind of new wave of some of the far right in the UK and around Europe highlighting, oh, no one's paying attention to these Christians being massacred because this is what they're being fed now. They've gone from, just being showing anti-immigrant stuff down the pipeline of libertarianism and into Christianism. And I looked up all the people who have ever been had an arrest warrant put out for them by the ICC, and about 23, 24 of them out of 40 are Christian leaders. And I just think it's funny because they don't pay attention to these things. They don't pay attention to the fact that is it the M23 group right now? That's like obviously from Rwanda, and they're attacking is in Congo right now. I'm so sorry, guys. My message, that's a Christian group. Nobody cares that they're slaughtering people right now. It's only when Christians are being unalived. Oh my God, TikTok language.
It's not TikTok, you can say
you forget.
You always do that.
But yeah, anyway, the right wingers are pissing me off right now because they are being taken down a right wing Christian radicalized, nationalized. I can't get my words out today, guys. Sorry, you guys know what I'm talking about.
No, you're making sense.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. I think they only want to utilize well, this is the thing that people only want to bring up theology or the Abrahamic religions if it's going to confirm the biases of whatever political agenda they're trying to go for. So it's like, oh, I have to paint Christianity in a certain type of way and demean Islam or like it's just it's racialized, to be honest. Let's be real. I think it's incredibly racialized. So yeah, I think that kind of adds to it as well.
Also, Christians have been killed in Gaza as well. Look up Layla Moran, MP. Her family's a Christian Palestinian family who are in Gaza. Andrew, but have they considered getting a Saturday job, Gary? This is actually where we're at.
They
go
should
ahead,
get
sorry.
a Saturday job. And also, I mean, what was that? Rachel Reeves when she said, and this is talk about disabled people, and she's like, oh, why don't we treat them as children and give them pocket money? Take away their pocket money and they can go get a job. So disabled people on PIP just need that grind set culture. That's what they need to do. They need to grind it out.
Edward with the great comment. This always needs to be pointed out. Capital Flight is largely a fiction. They can't move fixed
100%.
assets, for example. And this idea as well that we need to, obviously it goes down to trickle down economics, right? We need rich people here, so eventually some money will trickle down. Like, tell me how many jobs Rishi Sunak created with his 700 million quid that he's got. He didn't create any jobs with that. The only jobs that he created was created a firm which is only there to make money off of money, right? That didn't hire many people. He made his 700 million quid or whatever it is that he's worth with a very small team of people just simply working with the markets. What jobs has Rishi Sunak created outside of being a prime minister, right? This idea that we need them and we rely on them. They can all fuck off and leave all their assets here, and we'll take care of them quite nicely.
We need to, and we're doing our best, but we need to break this myth that the rich people create the jobs. Because, look, it's a very convenient myth, isn't it? Because that basically means, look, we're held to ransom by the billionaire class. Because at the end of the day, we need them to stay in this country so they can pay taxes or whatever little taxes they pay. And they're the job creators. That's not true, right? The job creators are the workers themselves and the consumers. So to break it down very quickly, if people don't have enough money to spend, then businesses aren't going to survive because no one's buying their stuff. So you have to rebalance the economy so more ordinary people have higher purchasing power. That's what creates jobs. It's a circular thing. It's not just a rich person comes in and creates loads of jobs. Where does he get that money from? Well, he gets it from profits. So where's profits come from? Well, from the business. But how does the business get profits? Because people spend money. It's very, very simple. But of course, it's very convenient to say, well, no, we have to do what the rich people say because they're the job creators. They're not. They are not the job creators. Absolutely not. In fact, actually,
they get rid of jobs.
Very, very wealthy people, right, don't have that much value in society. I love to use this. I promise it won't be too long, but I love to use this analogy, right? Let's say you got a Tesco's. What happens if the cleaners don't turn up? The shop doesn't open because it's unclean. What happens if the people on the tills don't turn up? They got no one to collect the money to put in the tills to pay for stuff, right? You need these bottom line people. But what if a CEO dies? Do all the shops close? No, it goes down to the board of directors and they control things. So you can essentially live. I'm not saying let's get rid of rich people, but like we need to stop putting this like emphasis on the value of rich people when the true value comes from ordinary people. Because without us, they ain't got anything. They need us to do their jobs, and they need us to spend money to make money. It's so unfathomably simple.
Tesco is also a really good comparison because I checked this recently. How many people Elon Musk employs is not too dissimilar from how many people Tesco employs in the UK. So you've got Elon Musk, who's, his net worth is going up and down, but let's say it's between 300 and 400 billion. And you've got Tesco, which is worth, I think when I checked, it was like 30 or 40 billion. That 30 or 40 billion holds, over 100,000 jobs. And he is worth, almost 10 times that and has the same amount of jobs. So how can anybody even say that him having that amount of money is somehow going to help create jobs when pound for pound it just absolutely doesn't?
What kind of jobs? Think about when they say Musk creates jobs or Jeff Bezos creates jobs. What, working for minimum wage, pissing in a bottle because you don't get enough time off? I was actually reading, it was in Grace Blakely's book Vulture Capitalism, and she was giving an example, an account of someone working at Amazon, and someone had a heart attack and died, and they were told to work around the dead body. Just imagine that. Oh, but Jeff Bezos, who is one of the richest people in the world, we need him because what? He creates shitty jobs, back-breaking jobs for long hours and disgusting pay. No, I don't think so.
I also think as well, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No. I was just ad-libbing. I was just going to say that's so grim. Like, it's just disgusting. But I think that's what we need, though. Do we not need a reawakening of class consciousness? And I feel like with these conversations, that's what's happening. I think that's what the ruling class fear as well. I think the ruling class fear the potential that there will be a reawakening of class consciousness, and I think that's fucking powerful. When you realize that actually the rich don't yield power the way that they think they yield power.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of CEOs and a lot of people in Bezos' position have read Karl Marx and have read the Communist Manifesto, because. And the reason why I say that is because at the moment in today's society, the people who have the most class consciousness are the billionaires. They are incredibly good when it comes to understanding class, and they have solidarity among themselves, right? You can have one CEO attack another CEO on something, but when it comes down to it, when it comes down to representing their class, they work together. But the working class don't have class consciousness, and that's why we fight over culture, over, oh my God, trans people exist, the world's going to end, or, oh my God, immigrants, because people don't have class consciousness. But the billionaire class do. And I do wonder, maybe because they have fucking read the Communist Manifesto, and they are very well versed with Marx. Because it would them understanding Marxism would suit them very well, because then they could be like, now I can try and get more money at these people.
Agreed.
So
sorry, Lewis, I've actually cut you off.
You go ahead. No, I was going to move on to another comment, so carry on.
I just want to say really quickly, because then also, like you said, it's this infighting that we have within the working classes. Like this, even when we had that, when you'd mentioned about them calling Gary a communist, it was the most outlandish claim, because if he were a communist, he wouldn't be calling for wealth taxes. He'd just be calling for the abolition of capital as a whole. So the fact that basic redistribution is seen as this radical ideal, I think, tells you everything about how the right political discourse try to, I think,
well, I tell you, if he was a communist, I'd be like, based. So these guys are threatening me with a good time. Oh, he's a communist. If only. I would like to see more communists in society than what we have now. And I say that as someone who doesn't even identify as a communist. I'm like, more communists the better.
We've had someone in the chat today who's been causing a lot of fights. His name's Tone. But before we read this out, I want to express that earlier in the chat, I actually have it tagged. He actually was supportive of a 100% inheritance tax, which is a lot of like people's dream on the further left. But then obviously throughout the entire chat, he has been defending the status quo of the current system by putting stuff like this idea that the UK is set to lose all these thousands of millionaires by 2028 because of issues that we have in this country. I want to specifically put this into context. The only people who are saying millionaires are fleeing, all that data came from companies who are financial planners, right? They are incentivized to put this data out and to compare how bullshit this idea of capital flight is. When Labour threatened to put in VAT on schools, we had all these surveys come out from, like the private school union and all these other things. The Telegraph was all over this, and it was saying that 30-40% of people in private school are going to have to go into the system. They can't afford it. It's going to absolutely affect the education system in the UK. And then just last week we got an article in The Guardian saying that so far school admissions have been unaffected. So it just kind of proves that they can put out the data to try and scare you, but when push comes to shove, it's just not true. And I don't believe these financial companies when they're saying all these millionaires are going to go. And also define a millionaire, because when you've got a couple who've had a nice middle class family and they're in their 50s or 60s, they own a house, they've got 2 big fat pensions. There are lots of people who aren't rich who are millionaires. Do you know what I mean? Because all their assets tied together may put them over $1 million, and then they use that data to try and scaremonger any change that will affect their wealth in any way.
And I want to confirm that as well, because I want to say, here's why capital flight is a load of horseshit. It's not in the interest of the capitalist or someone with a lot of capital to leave the country, even if they're being taxed more. So, look, first of all, nom-doms is a horrendous thing. You should end that loophole. If you end that, you're going to solve a lot of those problems, right? But think about this. A lot of people invest in countries because they're stable and they're worth investing in. A lot of the things when it comes down to taxes, I don't think makes much of the account for what these people do. I think what you're saying is it's propaganda. But like, if you're someone who has a lot of businesses in the UK, for example, and your taxes on the profits are raised, right? What would it be? Like, how would it benefit you if you said, right, I'm pulling out all my businesses then? Because 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So if you pull out all your assets or sell all your assets, which by the way, selling your assets is absolutely fine because we tax as assets. But if you pull your businesses out, you're going to lose money. It's not a zero-sum game. It's better to actually just be taxed a little bit more because you're still going to make the profits of a market of, I don't know, 50, 60 million people in this country. You're still making money. So it is a load of horseshit. And again, wealth taxes, land value taxes, exit taxes, all these things address capital flight anyway. And the last point I want to make is, if it's individual millionaires leaving, so fucking what? It's no different to if someone who's on, like 30 grand a year leaves. So what? It doesn't matter. The issue is when people with extreme wealth leave, but that doesn't happen because they'll lose a lot of that extreme wealth if they leave or if they end up ending their businesses here. I think there was something that came out that said 10,000 millionaires are leaving because their taxes have been raised. They're claiming nom-dom, so they're not paying taxes anyway. So bye, good riddance. Close the door behind you. If you're not paying taxes anyway, fuck off. I don't care. So it is largely a myth. It's a way to, what you said, Lois, absolutely bang on. It's to scare people. Don't tax us, we'll leave. You ain't leaving.
Yeah.
Also, as well, someone further down the chat, I just want to point out, because I just did a quick little lovely fact check. So someone further down in the chat is again arguing constantly for the system. Where's that comment gone? So marriage causes divorce is saying billionaires are leaving, 100 private schools are closing down.
I mean, technically it does, because you can't get divorced without being married. But
it's a good name, I'll give them that. But I want to use this opportunity to show you how propaganda is used. Marriage causes divorce. Just Google how many private schools close down a year. And then The Guardian did a lovely article just in October showing you that between 2013 and 2023, 847 private schools closed down in those years, an average of 77 a year. So it just shows you that every single year, VAT changes or not, private schools close down all the time. And guess what? They open too. So this idea that Labour have caused 100 schools to close, which, by the way, that is not an accurate number, is just, again, propaganda marriage. Use this as an opportunity to make sure that you're not being manipulated.
Look, guys, stop being bootlickers for the billionaire class. They
This
don't care
one's
about
not-
you. They
They
don't
care
think
about
about you.
you.
They want you dead, right? They
They
want you
don't
dead.
care about
They
you.
do not care. Stand with your class, man. Stand
Wake
with the
up.
working class.
You know, it's really frustrating, actually. It really, and just going back to your point about the ritual leave, like, oh, it's not a good faith concern. I think it's so fucking boring. It's like what Lewis said, scare tactic. It's part of a long history of capitalist class resistance to any form of redistribution. And we've seen that script before. Any proposal that seeks to redress the grotesque accumulation of wealth is met with doomsday prophecies from the media political elite. And I'm fucking tired of it. You know what? Marriage causes divorce. Wake up. Wake up.
Well, in the meantime, we got a bunch of. Oh, sorry. Go
on,
ahead.
Lewis. You go ahead first.
No, I was going to say in the meantime, we've got a bunch of new donations.
Oh, wow.
I was about to show them all. So after Andrew was the last one, and then obviously Moji gave
Thank
a
you,
lovely
Moggy,
pound.
again. No, that's a cool profile picture. I like that. I'm not a big Pokemon fan, by the way, but I just thought that was a cool picture.
Oh wait, what's the name of that Pokemon again? I used to love the movie.
It used to be Squirtle, but that's gone. Is that?
It's not a Squirtle. It's the Pokemon that Ash rides the back of when they're in the water.
You know every single Pokemon, don't you?
Snorlax. No, I don't know any. I know none.
Not a Snorlax. And also Andy donated another £2 and asked Sarah where she got her top from again. Sarah, would you share that again?
Yeah, the realist guys on Instagram, the realist guys. I'll put it in the comments.
Lovely. We got a lovely £5 from Graham. Great stream, live chat. Thank you, everyone. He did actually send a second donation, and I think it might be a typo because he put Zionism is anti-Semitic. Oh no, sorry, I read it wrong. Never mind. Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Right,
yeah. I read it as Zionism isn't. I read it wrong, guys. I read it wrong. And then again, everyone's loving your top. Everyone's loving your top. Another one.
I must say that Lewis is also wearing the same top. You can't see it. Natalie, thank you for the super chat. These aren't available. They're not for sale. They're just printed. But we have absolutely had discussions with the crew about doing some sort of merch. The only problem with that is if we were to do it now, because we have no money, right? If we want to do it properly, we'd have to have money to like set up a proper shop to make sure that the garments are made by like unionized workers and stuff. That's very expensive. Now we could just like set up one of them websites where you basically like it all goes through them. And we could literally do that today. I mean, like, there's a function like through Patreon or whatever, but I'm worried that like the quality of the garment would be shit, and it's just going to use like minimum wage workers or worse than that. So we could technically do it through like through a service. I just don't know if that's very socialist of us. If we were to do that, I feel like maybe we should wait and do it properly, where we can actually have a shop where we can make sure that those who are making the t-shirts are like unionized workers, which might mean it might not be a few years. I don't know, but you know, if anyone's got suggestions though, because I do want to see people wearing this around. I'd love to bump into someone they're wearing this. I'm like, oh yeah, but.
And by the way, to Moji, can you just tell me in the chat if your name is pronounced like Moggy or Moji, please? Because I want to make sure I get it right. Let's go back to some comments from the latest story. I like this one. Starmer said he wasn't here to offer hope or be liked. Well, he succeeded and then some.
Accurate. Yeah.
But I made a video about Labour and reform earlier because they launched like a big war on reform today through campaigns and stuff like that. And it's this really weird place to be in, isn't it, guys? Because we don't want reform to win, but we also hate Labour for obviously very different reasons. And it's a weird place to be in where almost everyone I know doesn't want to support Labour, but at the same time, they don't want to get reform in or even let the Tories back in. And I hate the system that we currently have.
So I was just looking at more comments. There's loads of comments coming through. It's such a busy chat.
Same.
I'm really enjoying
it's a
tonight.
Very busy chat. I've really enjoyed tonight. I honestly
this
have.
This has been very fun. I think it's because there's been a lot of Marxist talk, and as a self-proclaimed Marxist, this is I'm loving this.
Great comment from the Funk Analytic fan. When we had strong and effective trade unions, average wage is increased in line with GDP growth, and workers got a bigger share of wealth and which was created by their own labor. Absolutely true. This is why they weakened the unions. This is why Trump in America is going after unions right now. Despite the many, many, many issues I have with Biden, he was actually one of the most pro-labor.
He did some very good labor policies. He did, didn't he?
I think wasn't he the first president to ever stand on like a union line or something like that. But again, lots of issues with Biden. I don't want to praise him too much.
Yeah, I mean, we can obviously separate his disgusting policy on genocide, but
it's hard to.
I think Bernie Sanders said, like, to be fair, like domestic policy when it comes to labor relations, he was the most pro-labor government since FDR. When it comes to social policy, obviously FDR was way more radical, like social security and stuff. But like when it came to labor policies, Biden was pretty good. Could have gone further.
Do you know what's actually a really interesting fun fact I learned very recently? Because there's talks in America of Trump using the Insurrection Act, which is where you can use the military to quell social unrest. And I actually looked up all the times when they used the Insurrection Act in the past, and it's only ever been used mostly in relation to a social issue related to race or against people protesting labor rights. And I found that really interesting. I found about over half a dozen instances where they had to literally use the Insurrection Act to get the military, because people were protesting in the late 19th century for workers' rights, for more money, to not be exploited as much like that. And I love the fact that the most capitalist country in the world has literally used the military to try and quell these labor protests.
Yeah, I mean, the military, the police often, I mean, that's what the police are there for, isn't it? To protect capital interest. You know, you saw it actually, I think it was recent Amazon strikes in the US, and you saw police officers policing it because their sole purpose really was to protect the interests of capital. And I always
did you see the viral video recently of the 9 police officers?
Sorry.
No, I was going to say, did you see I think like the most like epitomous video I've seen recently of capitalism was the 9 police officers guarding the Cybertruck that was parked in the street. Did you see this?
See that, but no.
Yeah, so because obviously Cybertrucks have been trashed, and people were saying like, you know, these police are protecting this car more than they are, you know, like innocent bloody citizens who actually need help in the country. I just thought it was very epitomous of the capitalist system. We've got so many comments. Okay. More proof to me that this was a middle class project. Environmentalism without a class politics is just gardening. This was obviously in reference to Just Stop Oil. What do you guys think?
Great. I agree. We need class consciousness always. Like, even with the last comment about trade unions, like, you need to politicize the people that are involved in any movement. And I think if you politicize people, not in some abstract way, but through a shared struggle, then I think you fight the boss and you win, essentially. So I think you really begin to see how the system really works, and you see who's on your side and you see who isn't. Like, there is a way with that. So yeah, I completely agree. It would be just gardening, but gardening's therapeutic. But we want to tackle it on a systemic level.
Yeah, I broadly agree with that.
I think this is if I can bring in Carla Denyer into this as well. Like, I really like Carla. I really like her, but she is like the epitome of like middle classness. You know, even some of the clips from the last few days where she's been talking about, you know, I think it was Callum obviously asked her on one of the videos that we did, you know, what about Capital Flight? And she was like, you know, people want to stay here because they want to go to the theatre and the museums. And I'm just kind of like, oh, you're so middle class. And if the Green Party managed to get somebody who was like, you know, really working class, but also such a good speaker, they could go so much further. And I'm not saying Carla is holding them back. She's still very new, guys, isn't she? She's been an MP, you know, less than a year. Maybe she'll get there, but she really needs to like soften up and get a bit gritty.
I think they need to get gritty.
You could say, well, she's kind of a new MP, but I think it's more instinct. And I think that's the problem with the Greens. It's the middle class element, which they can't really get out of. And it doesn't mean they don't have good policies. If you look at manifesto by manifesto, the Green Party have the best policies, right? You have to vote for the Green Party, again, apart from a handful of seats with independents, right? But it does feel like that middle class mindset, you know, that niceness. I mean, even when you interviewed her near Parliament, you were trying to get her to, you know, get her angry. And people want to see politicians angry with them, especially when you said, look, you know, there are far too many rich people in Parliament. And her answer was like, well, let's not hold every rich person to the same standard. Some good no, don't do that. Just be a populist.
But yeah,
and I say what's also ironic for the Green Party.
I know, definitely with love. It's a shame that we have to cave into, like, you know, populism, but it's true. Populism sells. Populism garners attention, and I think there needs to be. Yeah, you need grit. I don't think you can I don't know if soft politics works, but listen, I love the Green Party voter. No shame in my game. So I'm going to back him.
Don't you think it's interesting, though, how we'll say Carla Denyer needs to get a bit more gritty and down to earth, but then at the same time we'll be telling reform voters, like, this guy went to private school and he's really posh. It's really frustrating that you have to almost like attack people for who they are, but then also tell people who they are. You need to be a little bit different. I don't know.
I was having an interesting discussion with my partner actually the other day, and I'm not above that. Like I think given the stakes, given that basically we've got a fascist scholar who's fled the US because he thinks that the US is turning to fascism, I think absolutely go after the right personally. I don't give a fuck.
That guy that you're talking about, his grandparents fled Germany too.
His grandparents fled Germany, yeah.
Yeah. We got a lovely another donation in response to my insurrection comment. An
Legend.
insurrectionist invoking the Insurrection Act.
I was just about to say that. That's what I was going to say. I was like, I think it's so ironic that you got the Jan 6ers and the movement behind that, and now they're invoking the Insurrection Act. Very funny. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it.
I think we're going to see that Insurrection Act coming in soon, I bet. Okay, so we do have more comments. Sorry, I know I clicked that one off. I did so many. Okay, so oh, I've lost my thing with it now. Oh, I like this one, Mario. I'm just not sure what the rich are so scared of. What do you think, guys?
More.
They should be scared of us.
They should be scared of us. Yeah.
Also, in practical terms, Edward's always here with the more practical comments. We need a land tax, equalization of capital gains tax with income, as well as the one-off wealth taxes, although they are good. And this is so true. It's frustrating how we can live in a system where, when I worked at Burberry, I brought that up earlier, in the space of 3 years, my team tripled sales. They went from 12 million to 30 million, and my salary went up by £650 in 3 years. And my CEO, his salary doubled, but it doubled because they gave him an extra £3 million of shares, and those shares will stay in an account, and then after so many years he'll be able to cash them in with a capital gains tax, and he will pay less income tax as a percentage than me. And it's frustrating because if we all suddenly at our worker level, if we all suddenly found a system where we could pay ourselves in shares and go around income taxes at their standard payee level, they would change the system within a second. But no, they get to exploit this.
But yeah, Ed was right. You need not just wealth tax, it is the equalization of capital gains tax. Absolutely. Because you're hitting landlords there, and those with multiple properties. Yes. Like you're adding no value to society. That's what I think people are a bit confused. Like, what do you mean by tax wealth not work? Landlordism. Like if you're using an asset, which is a human right in my mind, a roof over your head, as a way to generate income without doing any work, then why the hell is that being taxed less than income, which is actually work? Land value tax, absolutely fantastic as well. So, Labour in their first budget did slightly increase the capital gains tax, right? And to show that how much of a bootlicker Rachel Reeves, this is my favourite term now, to show how much of a bootlicker Rachel Reeves is, she said after that, we're never going to do a budget like that ever again. We had to do it, but we're never going to do it again. And if that wasn't a radical budget, that was a milquetoast, probably a one nation Tory budget. Nothing centre-left or social democratic about it. And that's the furthest you're going to go, which, by the way, I said that's the most radical they're going to get. And they didn't equalise capital gains. They just slightly increased it.
Absolutely.
Come on, what do we expect from that government? Obviously, another very obvious comment. They prefer to target disabled or immigrants to distract away from the economic injustice. This is so true because it's hard to take on the economic system, right? This is why Corbyn's out of the party. This is why Zara Sultana's out of the party. This is why John McDonnell as well. All these people are now currently outside of the party, and these are the people who are on the left the most, fighting against the current economic system and the way things are. But that's on why Labour, if I find it easier to purge them, right, and then just be like, oh well guys, if we just make some videos where we're locking migrants up and raiding their homes in the middle of the night, that's somehow going to win us the power that we need.
Yeah,
because it's just, this is what I mean, this is what we're talking about every single time. It's going to come back to this every single time. We need to become more class conscious. Like, I'm sick and tired of the competitive ethos of neoliberalism really like just spearheading these movements against marginalized communities. Come on. The disabled are not going to take things from you. The immigrants are not going to take things from you. It really is the ruling class. Wake up. weaker.
Controversial comment though, and I saw this recently referenced in a article done by a scholar at the Jim Crow Museum. But when we're talking about poor people who are tied into the capitalist system to such a point where they will blame things like migrants or other people on the economic issues, you actually need to realize, controversial statement, that reform voters who think that migrants are the number one issue and things will get better, they're also a victim of the capitalist system too. They are.
Absolutely.
Despite
I don't
despite
think that's
their bigotry.
controversial though. It's like it's kind of
For
like
some
saying
people,
that
for
how
some
men,
people it is.
Well, it's like kind of like saying how men are victims of the patriarchy. They are, right? You know, sexism and misogyny is bad for men too. It crushes your soul. You know, it's good for obviously white rich men, I guess. But no, I don't think that's controversial in any way. You know, I think some voters to come to our side. I don't want to disregard them unless they're, you know, really really bad. Which obviously there's some of them out there. But how are we
I think
win?
I think some people find it controversial because they don't like to hear that people who might be supporting a party who obviously perpetuate massive amounts of racism and white supremacy,
Yeah,
the people who support it are
you ain't gonna win without them, you
victims
know?
as well.
Because there are people who and I spoke to these people, and I know obviously Lewis, you've spoken to a lot of them. There were people who were between the Greens and Reform. And especially, I mean, that's the sort of like to a centrist that will blow their minds. They're like, "Why do you understand?" It's very easy to grapple. They're pissed off with the status quo parties, and the Greens and Reform, even though Reform's policies and the people behind them are very pro-establishment, they've got that veneer of anti-establishment, and people want something different. And that's why I think actually that the biggest driving force to reform from people isn't even immigration. I think there's a large part of it, but I think they really care about the cost of living crisis and stuff like that too. They just want something different. You know, I can't really quantify that though, but this is a belief I have.
I agree.
What was that, Sarah?
I agree.
I agree. The Generalissimo, love the name. I don't know if Curtis is aware. Helena of No Justice Stream struck with copyright is struck with copyright whenever she does her QT segment. So I actually got my video taken down on TikTok recently, and it's because when I was clipping something, they detect, like, if you've got like a badge, so it's like the question time banner, they detect that in the video, and that can take it down. Even the moderator who was reviewing my video told me this. So make sure next time you clip anything that there's no, like, it's just a person. Make sure there's no banners or badges or anything in the video.
YouTube does a lot of it through audio as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this I understand. If it's corporate media, it's private. I expect that. This is the BBC. It's supposedly a public institution. Like,
we pay our TV licenses.
Am I wrong? But I feel like we should be allowed to repurpose this.
Yes, we pay our TV license. For God's sake, what do you want more?
I suppose, obviously, you know, it's going to go into the pockets of Fiona Bruce, so.
They're not raising our salaries. She's so entitled. God.
I don't know how many more comments you want, guys, because obviously we're massively over. What do you think? Some more?
It's up to you, Curtis.
Maybe a couple more.
Okay, we'll do Gabriel. So what makes me cringe is this is Gary, they use his success as an argument against him when he repeatedly explains it's virtually impossible to have social mobility nowadays and most struggle to pay basics. This is absolutely true. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, sorry, no, you go ahead.
No, sorry, I was actually reading it again because I need to read it. Sorry.
Well, I mean, you've got. I found it quite funny that people were saying that Gary was envious, and I'm like, this guy's a multimillionaire. I've seen criticisms of where he's at from actually even some people on the left saying we shouldn't really trust this guy. He's a multimillionaire. I'm like, we need to take what the fuck we can get. I mean, who's? I'm not aware of this argument. Who's using his success against him?
No, this happens a lot with Gary when I've seen him have conversations with people.
He managed to make it, so why is he telling other people you can't make it?
Essentially, yes, yeah.
So it's the sort of the Daniel Priestley argument from the Diary of a CEO. He was like, you're putting people down, but you made it, which obviously he's just saying that it's an exception. Because look, again, if you know the story of Gary, he got into trading because he won a card game. Like, that was it. He won a competition. He wouldn't have been put in that position because of his class background, actually. Someone else would have taken that job because their dad was in the business. But because he won a competition, they were like, oh, fuck it. Let's bring him in.
This is the thing. I think like he obviously, and we said this earlier, like he's lived through austerity and inequality. Like this is someone who like he's not speaking out of his arse when he's talking about the things that he's speaking about. But what I think frustrating is that people, rather than engaging with the substance of what Gary is saying on wealth inequality, on tax justice or redistribution, I think they resort to these like really, really awful deflections and like personal incredulity. So like I think either focus on what he's saying and take it, or don't engage with him at all, because that's not the purpose of a discussion. It's not the purpose of a debate. I think that's just the protection of class privilege being dressed up as reasonable disagreement. So yeah,
I'm going to put this up as the last comment because I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I'll frame it this way. So Jacqueline, hi Jacqueline, you've put, there is nothing wrong with communism, just some of the communists that have been in charge in the past. And this is absolutely true because, you know, we've seen it all before, right? As people on the left, like when everyone brings up socialism or communism, and it's like, well, name one successful communist state or socialist state. And it's like then you have to go into the argument of how, this is a very cog argument as well. Like, how do you define success, right? Because you could take somewhere like Cuba and think that's a failure, but it depends how you measure it. They have a higher literacy rate and a higher life expectancy than America. So are you only measuring this through the success of money? Well, if you want to measure it through the success of money, we know that during our capitalist period, there has actually only ever been a very small window where people actually earned an exceptional amount of money consistently for so many years before the system has started to decline, because we're currently in the decline of that. There was that period, because Gary brought it up, like 1955 America, right, where the wealthy were heavily taxed and everybody was able to get a house, everybody had a job, massive salaries, massive increases every year. And ever since then, it's been pretty much downhill, guys. So how do you define what is successful when it comes to an economic system? You can't really.
I mean, what I find about this argument when people say, well, you're a socialist or whatever, name me one country where socialism has worked. And it's not understanding how systems transition, right? So the way capitalism came about after feudalism, it wasn't like, oh, we all point into this one country and capitalism worked and there we go. Like it's a gradual thing, but it's also a series of experiments, right? So no one can really truly pinpoint the birth of capitalism, because you can find loads of different examples in very obscure places on Earth where they were doing experiments, and some of these experiments failed. It's like trial and error, and then slowly over time it takes hold. That's the same with socialism, right? You don't go to one big nation and go, well, this is where socialism worked, and then suddenly we're all socialists. You look at certain historical examples where there was a socialist experiment and it worked very, very well, but it couldn't hold up because we're in a global capitalist system. There were certain external forces that stopped it from happening, or there were other internal things that meant it failed. Doesn't mean that socialism isn't worthwhile. So it's very simplistic saying, show me where it's worked, but we don't flick a switch and then we go to a different system, because that argument could have been deployed, and maybe it was deployed, when you had the early liberals who were calling for, more of a market-based economy. I mean, not that markets predate capitalism, right? But the early liberals would say we need to move toward this sort of thing where we leave merchants behind, we leave feudalism behind, and we lead by profits, right? And there'll be people saying, well, where does capitalism work? Show me an example. It doesn't work like that. People always default to the established order. It goes into the quote, I don't think it's actually by Mark Fisher, but he deploys this quote, which is, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. It's true. Because we can't imagine it, and because there's no, it's hard to point to, people automatically think, well, capitalism must be the best system because it's what we have now. No, it's just a bias because we're living under it. We lived under feudalism for thousands of years. Capitalism has only been around for 200 years, and it's already failing on itself. It could be one of the shortest living systems, but that's the argument you kind of.
So Marriage was put a series of comments again in the thing defending the system. She put she or he, I don't know actually. Win capitalism, L birth rates, and also decline is caused by low birth rates.
But we're living under capitalism though.
What's causing the decline of low birth rates?
What is he saying that capitalism is causing the decline of low birth rates?
I know. No, she's saying no. I think they're saying like win capitalism because capitalism is good, but the only reason why it's failing right now is because of low birth rates. But it's the other way around, Marriage. It's not like capitalism is failing because of low birth rates. There's low birth rates because capitalism is failing.
You know
Think
what?
about this,
Marriage.
right?
causes- is
Sorry, no, you
so
go ahead. I've spoken enough. Go
No,
on, Sarah.
no. I feel like what you're going to say is invaluable. What I'm going to say is actually borderline awful. Like, I just
say
think
it.
the likes of marriage causes divorce. Literally, sleep with a tinfoil hat at night, and it's too tight. Like, just get it off. And
tight.
it's too tight. Like, take it off. It's too tight on your temples. But I think we need to actually. I'm just so sick and tired of people backing this system that actually is causing huge amounts of inequality. We need organization and we need strategy and we need vision beyond immediate policy fixes. And I think this would be my one and only criticism of Gary, because I do like Gary. But I think like he's very persuasive. But I think he's still, like I said, and we said this before, I think he still argues within that framework that we just need to make it somewhat better.
Marriage has made some very worthwhile comments, so I like you.
Who married?
But well, no, they made some pretty good comments before this one, but there's some about the taxes. I thought it was pretty good, right? They agreed with us on taxes. If you want to think of a pro-family or anti-family policy, what is it? Conservatives hate the welfare state, right? But what could be more pro-family than Social Security? Making sure that you have enough money in your pocket so you can start a family. Inequality means that there's less money for ordinary people. People can't have kids because of economic reasons. They can't, they can't get a house, so why are they going to raise children? The 2-child benefit cap is a perfect encapsulation of what you would say low birth rates, right? Scrapping the 2-child benefit cap would mean that more people are more likely to have kids, but we keep the 2-child benefit cap. So why is low birth rates the reason for capitalism failing? It's not. Capitalism doesn't serve the ordinary person. It serves the 1%. And you need an economic system that serves the majority of people. So people, if they want, they can have more kids.
So again, this person is continuing to actually
men. Okay.
But again, like if you want to talk about quote unquote poorly performing men, the issues that men have in terms of right now, if you look at like the suicide rate for men, one of the top reasons is things like gambling, right? Again, a product of capitalism. If you want to look at men not doing well in the current system because of economic pressure from masculinity and all these types of things, again, it's all tied to the economic system. If you want to talk about like, the good old fashioned manly men who, fought in World War II or fought in the military, right? Just even keep going further back. Why do you think the military exists, right? It exists to keep up the capitalist structures. Think about America as the perfect example of this. How many times they go to war to make sure that they keep their dominance in the world economically. How they, they assert their dominance over the world to keep up the petrodollar. How many times that they have got involved in different states. Obviously, we've got Trump right now, the epitome of it. He wants to control the Panama Canal because that is an economic power hub for the world. Everything that is attached to masculinity, economic pressures, being a man, all these types of things are tied into the capitalist system. Sorry, ran over.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe just poor performing men, Lewis.
Anyway.
Is that it? I know there's a lot more comments, isn't there? But, God, we're nearly 2 hours. This is an extra long normal island. What the hell?
Yeah.
The only thing that people pay with when it comes to capitalism is their life. But
Selling. No, I'm not going to say any more because we'll be here for another half an hour. What a show! Really, what a show, guys! It's been incredible. I mean, we've got 200 people watching currently right now. We've had loads of people on YouTube coming in. We've had some amazing generosity from the audience. Loads of super chats, loads of membership being gifted. And good to see that people who aren't on the left or who don't consider themselves on the left in here. I like to see that, definitely. The more the better, because it means that we're reaching out to people. But I think that is all we have time for. Of course, I want to thank you to everyone who tuned in. And of course, I want to thank the lovely Sarah for joining me tonight. I really enjoy our Fridays.
Yeah, really Friday's our day. I love it. Love it. Thank you.
Of course, thank you to Lewis as well for being our producer and adding amazing insights himself. He's a smart guy, isn't he? We love having
Sometimes.
We've got another quick super chat from Graham Turner. Thank you so much. The pleasure is ours. And remember to like this stream. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that bloody button. I'm sure most of you have, but hit it and hit the notification bell so you know we're going live or if there's a new video being dropped. We are so close to 20,000 subscribers. I really want to hit that milestone because it looks nice, but also it shows that we grow. We've had a very good month, by the way. The growth this month has been excellent. So thank you so much. Keep it up. But if you want us to continue to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/supports. there is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly for at least £3 per month, or you can follow another link to give us a one-time contribution. I don't need to tell you about Super Chats because you've been busy in that, and I don't need to tell you about YouTube memberships because you've also been very busy with that. But I'll have to wrap up the show. I almost don't want to go, but I've got my evening to attend to, and I've got to eat dinner, and I'm sure you guys have got a busy weekend too. So enjoy your weekend, and I'm Curtis Daly, and I'll see you next week.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.